Good evening, everyone. And with the posted time having arrived, I'll call the Finance Committee meeting for Tuesday, August 27th, 2019 to order. The first item on our agenda tonight is approval of the minutes of our previous meeting, 8/13 of 19. Copies of the minutes were in the meeting packets. Any revisions or amendments to the minutes necessary?
Move to approve, sir.
Okay, we have a motion to approve from Nutting. Is there a second? Second by Smith. Further discussion? Seeing none, members in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None are opposed. The minutes are approved. Item number 2 is discussion and possible action regarding funding of the business development position. And we have the HR director with us. Did you want to walk us through that, Tony, or?
I was hoping Chris would have the short straw.
Oh, either one, either one. We're good
No,
with
no,
that.
I'm happy to walk you through it.
Okay.
So this is the creation of a new position. The Economic Development Department is going through a structural reorganization, and we expect the Administrative Assistant 3 position to be coming vacant. The intention is to remove that position once it becomes vacant, and it would be replaced with this position. But we are hoping for the two incumbents to overlap a little bit, so for training purposes.
Okay, and it looks like the fiscal impact is actually fairly minor. It looks like $5,000 annually plus benefits, depending on whatever plan the person takes.
Yeah, it's going to depend upon what starting salary we end up offering, depending upon the candidate who's selected, who at this point we don't know. But based on the experience that they bring in, they could even have no actual fiscal impact, depending upon the employee hired.
Okay. Committee members, any questions for Tony or for Chris? Go ahead, Dennis.
It says $5,000 annually. This person isn't working for $5,000 a year, is she?
No, what we did was we took the current salary for the incumbent in the Administrative Assistant 3 position, and I compared it to the midpoint of the new salary range, which is the highest that someone could be hired at. So worst case scenario, without mayoral approval, we were looking at an increase of $5,000 salary for
Okay,
the
so
person.
what is the actual salary this person will get paid then?
Well, the salary depends upon the experience that the person comes in on, so at this point, I don't know what salary they'd be offered, but the salary range based on the position responsibilities is quite similar to the Administrative Assistant 3 position, although they're not in exactly the same salary range.
All right, and that salary is?
I apologize, off the top of my head, I don't recall.
Okay, thank you.
I can email that to you, though, if you'd like.
We show them in pay grade 18, but it doesn't show what range that falls in.
Right.
Well, that, providing me with the information tomorrow is great, but we're voting on it today, so.
Sure.
That might not, the next time this comes up, you might bring what you anticipate the salary to be, so we know exactly what we're looking at and so on. I realize you're replacing a person that left with another person, is that correct?
Well, we have a person who has tendered her resignation. She hasn't separated yet.
Okay. So you feel this other person coming in is going to be making $5,000 more than the person that is in the position now?
The highest salary that that person could be offered without the mayor's approval. So it's our general business practice that we offer from minimum to midpoint. The midpoint of the new salary range is $5,000 more than the current incumbent is making.
Okay.
It's pretty rare that we offer up to midpoint. Usually someone is less than that. So if I had to guess right now, I would say there would be no fiscal impact. I just can't make that promise because I haven't seen the candidate pool.
Okay. All right, thank you.
But that person would have to be exceptionally qualified to get above.
Yes.
Okay, okay. All right. So with that, do we have a motion from within the committee to approve the creation of that position to replace the other position as a product of their restructuring? We have a motion by Martins. Is there a second? Second by Nutting. Further discussion or questions? Seeing none, members in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None are opposed. That motion carries. Item number 3 is discussion and possible action regarding the budget modification for the part-time administrative 3 position in customer service. Mary Ann has that one.
So this one is related to the one that you just deliberated over. So a number of years ago, we actually hired the incumbent that's in that administrative position to work for our department just during the election season to help us out with a number of things with election administration. And she did that for a couple of years, and then Community Development was looking for someone to hire, and they hired that individual as a full-time, or I think she started out as a part-time person, but evolved into a full-time position. And because she had all of that experience with elections with us, she continued to support our department over the years with election. So I think actually she started shortly after Kelly left, our old clerk, which was around '09, do you think? Yeah, something like that, '08 or '09. So this administrative assistant in the Community Development Department has been working on elections since '08 or '09 to support the department for the administrative tasks such as interviewing and hiring the poll workers, doing poll worker training, helping with scheduling, things like that. And she currently estimates that she spends between 10 and 20% of her time doing election activity. So when Community Development creates this new position, when the incumbent leaves, they don't see that as a part of that position. So we would lose that support within our department. In addition, you know, we have noticed kind of increased demand for administrative assistant 3 support. So today we have at the front counter, we have 1 full-time, and then we have 1 part-time person that works just during the school year, and then we have 2 part-time people, 1 that works in the morning and 1 that works in the afternoon.
Okay.
And so we find ourselves with a lack of coverage at times of vacation. So we do have other staff within the department that are cross-trained to go to the front counter, but they have responsibilities too. Like one of them is our payroll person, so during payroll week, it's really hard for her to work and provide coverage. So we've been concerned about coverage at the front counter, and now with the loss of this support with election assistant in that administrative position, we were and with next year being a really heavy election season, we were hoping that you would consider providing us with 1 more part-time position. So these part-time employees, a new part-time employee in this situation would not qualify for health insurance. Well, they would, but they would have to pay their share, right?
Right.
And they would not qualify for the Wisconsin retirement system. So we're really just paying the hourly rate and Social Security. So they are very affordable from an hourly rate standpoint. At this point, we were proposing 0.625 FTE, which is basically somebody working from 8 to 2:30, because we do see spikes over the lunch hour.
Yeah.
And so this coverage allows us with extra staffing over the lunch hour. And again, we were hoping that we would be able to recruit for this position about the same time that Community Development would be able to recruit for their position, because then the incumbent would be able to do some training on election administration with our new person too, because we will need assistance in that area if we're going to keep busy.
When is the incumbent leaving?
She's leaving December 3rd.
Okay.
And that, you know, there will be some election prep that they will be able to work with. But like this year, we found ourselves in the summer in a very thin situation because one of our people went out on FMLA in July. So we really were thin this summer.
Okay. Committee members, questions for Mary Ann? Go ahead, Dennis.
Looking at the proposal, it says that the annual salary is $29,500 plus benefits. But on the backside, it says we're going to transfer $5,000 from election wages to 5,000 to clerk wages part-time. So how does the 5,000 and the 29,500 relate?
So the 5,000 would just be the budget amendment needed in 2019, because we figure by the time this person gets on board, we would just have them
The year is
for
pretty much out.
November and December, right.
Okay.
So that would just be the 2 months of work.
So the 29,500 is what the incumbent is making now?
That's what the new position would make the entire year.
And that's budgeted?
Well, we would budget that during the 2020 budget.
Okay. And this person will not start till the 2020 budget is in effect?
She would start, or they would start probably in November 1. So the 5,000 would fund them for,
Okay,
you
we're
know, I
funding
don't
for
know.
that 2 months until
Yeah,
the
for a
next
couple
budget
months.
kicks in?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Do we have a motion then from within the committee to create the position? Motion by Nutting, is there a second? Second by Kelbach. Further discussion or questions? Seeing none, members in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? None are opposed, that motion carries. Item number 4 is discussion and possible action regarding a budget modification and a change of purpose for Brockmire and Oak Island Park improvements. And we've got some information in the packets on that, and we do have our new Parks Director with us. Does anyone have questions for Jamie on the item, as far as what they're trying to do with those park funds? Go ahead, Dennis.
Okay.
Oh, go ahead, Dave.
I was just wondering if Jamie would come and speak
Sure,
so that
come on
our
up, Jamie.
television audience could be informed.
Hi, thank you very much. We have $100,000 budgeted right now to update the parking lot at JoJo's Jungle for ADA accessibility. That's going to be a Phase 2 project after the playground goes in. But we also received this year a community development block grant for Oak Island playground replacement at $138,000. And when we were going through the planning of that park, we were going to put wood chips in there. And having seen the river flood the entire playground this year, wood chips are something that's probably going to go down the river when it floods. So then we looked at alternatives to surfacing and think that poured-in-place surfacing, similar to what we just put down at River Life, would be very well-received in that park. It would be durable. If it floods, we just have to clean it. So we think that that would be a better investment in it. So looking at what some of our funding options, we could ask for an extension on the Community Development Block Grant and ask for another grant to fund that, or in talking with Mary Ann about different projects within the different areas, it came to be a suggestion that maybe we transfer our $100,000 that we have budgeted for the parking lot, because that will be a 2020 project, to the playground surfacing, which we plan to put the playground in this year. Our community development block grant goes through this year, and we have it ordered, we have it planned to go in by October. If we can do that, then we can pay for the parking lot improvement at JoJo's Jungle out of the TID district in that area next year when it comes time to update that parking lot for ADA accessibility.
Okay. Questions then? Dave, did you have one? I know Dennis has one. Go ahead, Dennis.
It says in the resolution that the Parks Department requested an increase in the TID 7-19 budget to fund Brockmire Park parking lot and corresponding repurposing $100,000 of the capital fund budget to Oak Island. And looking at the one page that shows the TID fund balances, it looks like TID number 7, if parentheses mean negative numbers, is $1,600,000 negative.
Yes, so that district does have a negative cash balance, but that balance has been declining annually, so there wouldn't really be a long-term negative impact to the city if we used $100,000 on an interim basis. So basically, the deficit wouldn't decline by that $100,000. You know, there's been some pretty big construction going out there. The ears, nose, and throat is increasing the increment in that district, and now there's another new building going up. So this deficit is going to be eliminated very quickly.
What is very quickly?
Well, in a few months, I'll actually be able to show you that when I do the PowerPoint presentation.
We'll have increment from ENT in 2020, right? Because it constructed
Yes.
in 19. And then the new building, we would have increment in 2021, assuming
Right.
they build and open it in
Right.
2020.
Yep.
Okay. And those should cash flow enough to make up the 100.
You're
Yep.
comfortable
Okay.
with telling us that that 1,692,000 is going to disappear in 2020, and we're going to have
It's not going to disappear completely in 2020, but it is on the decline. I can quick look it up on my phone. Hold on one second.
So based on the TID retirement schedule, you would just retire it a little more slowly for a year?
Right.
And then pick up the pace again with the new buildings?
Right.
So we should be able to close the TID on time?
Oh, for sure. The TID actually right now is anticipated to close early.
But it's my understanding that any TID that's in a negative number at the completion of the year, the negative has to be covered by the general fund, is that correct?
Correct, but that coverage is going to actually, from the general fund, is actually going down annually because the district's negative balance is declining each year. So, hold on, I'm almost there.
Meanwhile, if I might ask
Go ahead.
Ms. Polly a question.
Sure.
Yeah, glad to hear that Port in Place is a viable option for not only that park, but all potential future parks. I didn't know that was there a closure or an effort by standards that we move away from playground surface material that is like sand or chips or other, and going toward the more approved surfaces like we are doing? Is there, are we still using chips or redoing that but is the goal to go away from that?
Well, right now, a lot of our playgrounds are sand, and that is not an approved safety servicing
Right.
anymore. So definitely the goal is to reduce the sand, or to eliminate the sand in all of our city parks. So in most of them, we are putting wood chips. That is still an approved safety
that is.
surfacing.
Okay.
Yep, and it's ADA accessible. Where we can afford it, or where it makes sense, like this project, then we would try to push towards Port in Place, or a portion of the playground Port in Place. It's a longer lasting product, as well as just the safety qualifications of it. They're all ranked the same, and they're all qualified by the safety standards. But if we could go to Port in Place, we would. It's just that sometimes it's cost prohibitive to do that in every park.
That's good, and especially there for the flooding
Correct.
too. Thank you so much.
So Dennis, as you pointed out, in 2018, it was about $1.7 million deficit. By the end of 2019, we expect that deficit to decline to $1,478,000. It should be down to $883,000 by 2021, $234,000 by 2022, and then we'll have a profit by 2023.
And that timeline is unaffected by this investment?
Well, so it would
Or
slow
you-
down
or
by that
what?
100,000.
By 1 year? Yeah.
Right,
Okay,
yep,
okay. So
So
probably
I-
one extra year then?
right. So I see this as, a smart move. I think we would have proposed to fund this out of TID 7 initially. When Peter Knotek, the old Assistant Parks Director, was looking for funding, he didn't explain what our component of the project was going to be. TID 7 had specifically in its project plan improvements to the parking lots at Brockmeyer Park, so we definitely envisioned that when we created the
okay.
district. It's just there was a lack of communication between Peter and I, because I didn't realize it was going to be for parking lot improvements. So if he would have said that to me, I would have said, oh, we could fund that out of TID 7, and we would have budgeted for it originally
away.
in that fashion, yes.
Okay.
Well, it would appear to me we have two projects, but only really enough money to fund one without spending money we don't even have to do the other one. I guess we have to decide which one is more important, which one we're obligated to do. I don't feel we can do both.
I would add as well that the tax increment district, when it is in a deficit situation, does pay interest to the general fund once it returns into surplus. So, any lost investment opportunity, because we are holding that deficit for a period of time, really, we're made whole because we can
With
recover
interest.
interest.
Yes, but
from-
that's sometime in the distant future.
Right, but not far distance.
That's what I
mean,
call
you know, like
the
our
wimpy defense.
districts
I will gladly pay you Tuesday
function-
if you give me a hamburger
Right.
today, but
Our districts function in a deficit, all, you know, like, that is the way districts work. They function in a deficit.
Right.
We manage those deficits, and, you know, I didn't see increasing that deficit a little bit for this project as a negative. Like I said, if I would have known that it was going to be a parking lot project to begin with, we would have had that in the budget initially, back when this was added to the budget 2 years ago or whenever. Because of course, JoJo's Jungle has been, you know,
Fundraising for a long time.
fundraising for a long time, so this has actually been in the budget a couple years now, I think.
Okay.
So,
Well, and if it's a phased implementation, I mean, if we can, we're just in the early development stages of the 2020 budget now anyway.
Right.
And so if we can address JoJo's parking lot at that point, and you can get this done yet this year, and, you know, not have to extend that grant or turn it back in, it seems to make sense that we might consider this. Additional questions for Jamie within the committee? If not, do we have a motion to approve that budget mod? Or did I have a motion in a second? I don't think I did. No, not yet. Motion by Martins, is there a second by Kelbach? Further discussion or questions? Seeing none, members in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Okay, we'll record one no on that.
Thank you.
And that item then is complete. That brings us then to item number 5, discussion and possible action authorizing continued membership in CIVMIC for policy years 2021 and 2022. And you'll recall periodically, we have to renew our membership in CIVMIC. Cities and Villages Mutual Insurance Company is what that stands for. They manage a number of our self-insured plans and then advise us also, well, and carry our insurance for a number of things. And so this is just to renew that membership and continue to work with them. Do we have a motion to continue the membership?
Move to approve.
Motion by Nutting, is there a second? Second by Martins. Further discussion or questions? Seeing none, members in favor signify by saying aye. Aye, opposed? None are opposed, that motion carries as well. Item number 6, discussion and possible action on a presentation of the 2018 financial results. We've got that in the packets.
Yeah.
Marianne will kind of walk us through.
Do you want to do the last ones while
You
I
want to do the
get set
addendum
up?
first?
Sure.
Sure, yep, let me switch to the addendum quick here. We'll take the addendum while she's setting up her PowerPoint. Item number 8 is discussion and possible action regarding a sole source purchase for a 2013 used leaf vac from Hardline Equipment with a price of $72,275. And we've got some sole source documentation in the packets with that. We also have Public Works Director Lindman with us if there's questions on that item. And I think I have one, Eric, if you could come up. Is this the item or similar to the item that we had been leasing on a trial basis to see how this works with leaf pickup?
No,
different.
yeah, it is. So this is very similar to the truck that we have right now.
Oh,
The
okay.
leaf track that we have right now. We were proposing to purchase one this year, early next year, which you can see the quotes in. They're about 118,000, and that's just to outfit one of our trucks that we have already. So this is a new truck with everything already equipped on it. You know, we went out and got these costs for new, and then we were gonna outfit ours. But if we outfit it, usually takes 6 to 8 months to outfit one of our trucks with these, so we wouldn't have had it till next year. During that process, this used one came on the market, and Mark Hansen had found it. He's always monitoring. This one's out of Denver. Has reasonably low hours and miles on it. And it's outfitted, like I said, very similar to the one that we have right now. And we can pick it up right now, and it's about $40,000 less,
Right.
you know, with the truck, with it. So,
And they could use it this fall yet?
and we can use it this fall, yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Committee members, do you have questions? Go ahead, Mike.
Does this replace our existing truck, or does it augment what we have?
It augments what we have. So
Okay.
we will have two, if this purchase is approved tonight, we'll have two of them on the street, probably sometime the second week in October, which I think is going to be very significant to help us out.
That'll help, because there's a number of complaints. I mean, you can never get leaf pickup quite right, because nature plays in, and resident expectations are ever-changing as well. So two trucks, I think, should certainly make things faster.
Right. And I think, this does save us money, if we don't buy the used one, we're gonna have to buy the equipment to outfit one of our trucks, so, at an additional $40,000 cost, so this was a great find by Mark, so.
All right?
I think, just to add one other thing that we want to talk about is, maybe doing some work on the procurement policy, because right now, we need to bid out for these larger purchases, which is really hard to accomplish when you are taking advantage of used goods or used vehicles or equipment. And so the procurement policy doesn't really envision that. So Eric and I are going to work on making some proposals of perhaps how we could fit that in where, there still is some evaluation that goes on. And I think, in this, they did actually look at what the price of new is
Yeah.
versus used. And as Eric mentioned, he was in kind of a time crunch this year. So this allows us to take advantage of it for this season, but
Yeah, if we need to
will be bringing that back to
adjust that
finance for-
policy, that would be
for
good. And I mean, even as a component of that, we might want to consider, up to a set threshold, in a circumstance like that where used equipment is available for a planned purchase that's already in the pipeline, and if quick action needs to be taken, we could look at designating a line of purchase authority to the director to make that decision and report back to us once that's been taken care of. I mean, we could set a maximum, and then beyond that, we could consider them or whatever. So if that's part of the amendment, we could certainly consider that.
Okay.
Go ahead, Dave.
On the equipped page, Eric, 7,000 miles on the vehicle,
Yep.
790 hours. What are hours measured? Is that the vacuum equipment hours operation, or is it how is?
It's monitored, as the equipment's running, so that's, that would be the miles on the truck, and then, it also monitors hours for idling. So,
So it's engine hours?
correct,
Oh,
yeah.
So does that provide you with a maintenance procedure after so many hours, or parts, equipment, bearings, et cetera, replacement? Is it?
No, like our mechanics, typically what happens is, just the wear and tear. There's not any particular amount of hours. Just like any other vehicle, the oil gets changed and those types of things. But the vac section and the motors on that, when the bearings go, like if they suck something up, something was hidden in the leaves, that's usually when we run into problems, so.
Because these engines are running, but the vehicle may not be moving.
That's correct, yeah. And so, having both and talking with Mark, this is, very reasonable number of hours for a 2013 vehicle, so.
So on a side note, you won't have any complaints by South First Avenue for leaves pickup, because
Let's hope not.
there's no trees.
Yeah, well, not right now.
Well, right now, there's not much road, so.
Yeah.
We've gotten rid of our leaf problem.
Yeah.
Okay, so with that, do we have a motion to accept the sole source?
Yes, we do.
Motion by Nutting, is there a second? Second by Kalbach. Further discussion or questions? Seeing none, members in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? None are opposed, that motion's approved.
Thanks.
Thanks, Eric. Okay, and are we ready on the report?
Yeah.
We'll flip back over to item 6 then and hear about our 2018 results.
Yep, so we're actually running a little bit behind on our financial report this year. We did have, our auditors actually were purchased by another audit firm right as we were wrapping up the audit. And, audit firms have their review processes that they have to go through before they release audits. And of course, that transition from Shank, so Shank was purchased by Clifton Allen, whatever. Yeah. So the new firm had to review our financial reports before they could be released as well. And that delay, and of course, they were going through transition of trying to get all of the sales settled and, all of the things that happen to firms when they get purchased. So we were a little delayed. We will be having the audit firm come in and give a presentation too, but we generally have given our own presentation. Ours is usually a little bit more in-depth, but you will hear independently from the audit firm too. So we'll get that scheduled for the month of September. Oh, so where is the rest of it? Oh, hold on. There we go. Okay, so as we've discussed in the past, the general fund is where most of our government activities are accounted for. So all of your administrative departments, police and fire, refuse, all of the streets, and park and recreation. We had another good year as far as results for the general fund. At the end of the year, we had a profit for the 2018 activity of $984,000, and you can see that's very comparable and sustaining a trend from 2016. So our profit in 2016 was just over $1 million. Last year, it was about 876, or 2017, it was 876, and then in 2018, 984, and prior to that, in 2015, we were at 593. So we've been able to build up our general fund balance during that time period, which is shown on this next slide. So our total fund balance at the end of 2018 is $12,887,000. We have to allocate that as what's available and what is not spendable. So we have advances to the other TID districts, as well as inventory on hand, so those are considered non-spendable. And then we have some fund balance that's committed, so our contingency,
Where is this in the packet? What page number is this in the packet?
well, I think when we submitted it into the packet, only part of it got printed, so this portion is not in your packet, sorry about that. We had set some print parameters because I had given a PowerPoint presentation to the Joint Review Board that just had the TIDs in there, and that print had stayed with the plan, and I hadn't noticed it. So that's why you only got part of it. So when the Joint Review Board, I was just trying to be efficient, I used the pages out of the PowerPoint that related to the tax increment districts. And when I placed the page parameters in there, then they didn't get cleared out, and so it only printed a portion of it. So the first few pages.
Well, it's
did
fine.
show
You
up in
can
your-
just email those to us tomorrow,
I
or
will do
whatever,
that.
so
I
that
think
everybody has a copy.
We already have it on the website too.
Okay.
The whole thing. So anyhow, our very good news, as you can see, our fund balance, if we look at our total fund balance in the general fund, now this is alone, our total fund balance in 2014 was $9,400,000. 2018, it's now up to $12,887,000. So that's, we've really got a nice, strong fund balance, even with our restrictions that we have on the fund balance for the TID advancements, which really have been remaining relatively steady. So today, our fund balance policy says that our undesignated or unassigned fund balance should be at least 16.67% of our expenditures, or $5,581,063, and we actually have $8,185,000. So we are in good shape as compared to our policy. Our contingency balance, we have not drawn on our contingency balance for a number of years, so that has remained steady at $163.59. We certainly could bump that up during the budget process if we wanted to, but we have not been experiencing any issues with that. And with the size of our undesignated or fund balance, I don't really see the need to allocate more funds to contingency. So looking at the advances that we had to the.
Question.
Or Dennis has a question.
Oh, sorry.
Exactly what is the contingency fund used for?
Well, I think it's supposed to be for unanticipated expenses, so communities that maybe have a smaller undesignated fund balance might rely more on a contingency fund. Oftentimes, you can use it as a tool. Back in the day when we had a lot of unions and the union negotiations were more filled with conflict, we would use our contingency to, I guess, give us a little bit more wiggle room when we were negotiating, so we wouldn't put our raises that we were anticipating in the budget. Instead, we would put them in contingency, so the unions wouldn't necessarily know how much was available for raises. Of course, a lot of that negotiation now has been managed through Act 10.
10.
So I guess that eliminated a lot of the need. Sometimes communities will put more in contingency just to make it look like their fund balance isn't as strong.
Well, and for unanticipated things, like, I know that we had drawn on contingency for some unanticipated issues, and maybe infrastructure things even, during the recession, right? When we were in that situation where we had those 3 years where we drew it down quite a bit. I'm not sure if those were development related or if they were unanticipated expenses, but I know there were a few times
I
that.
could do some research on that.
we
I don't
had to-
recall the exact uses
Yeah,
at
we
the
spent
time.
down quite a bit. I mean, for a while there, it was going down a little, at what felt like an alarming rate. And now that's stabilized and we've not needed to draw on any of that.
Did we use that, and we experienced that stormwater washout on Third Avenue and Wausau?
We might have.
Remember that?
I can certainly
Concrete street was,
do some research and provide a
sure,
report
that
at
was
the
a very
next meeting.
unanticipated expense.
We have some issues going on with certain property owners here in town that are disputing their tax bill. If we end up having to devote money to that, would that come out of the contingency fund? or
We
would
could,
it-
yes, take it out of
Okay,
contingency.
because some of those numbers are substantial.
Or you could just take it out of your fund balance, too. Either one. I'll give you a report on contingency draws, though.
Okay.
So we were talking about our TID advances. If you look at this next slide, you can see back in 2014, our TID advances from the general fund totaled almost $3.9 million, and that has declined in 2018, somewhat substantially, but was relatively steady for that period of 2014 through 2017. And again, if you look, TID 7 is a major component of that. TID 3 and TID 7 are, some of the major components of that. And you can see TID 7 in 2017 and 2018 declining. And as I mentioned earlier in the meeting, that we expect that to continue because now we are finally getting some strong increment in that fund. So general fund 2018 revenues, we had a very good year. You can see that our positive variance of about $1.5 million in revenues, with the major areas being, public charges for services, intergovernmental charges, miscellaneous revenues were the three major winners, and licenses and permits. From a property tax income standpoint, just kind of outlining where our property taxes are allocated to the various funds, the general fund being the major user of property taxes, followed by debt service and transit. Again, if you recall, in previous conversations, we've been trying to maintain a level property tax in the debt service fund of $4,123,000. And we've been trying to grow our central capital purchasing each year. So just some information. From our general fund expenditures, this area, we came very close to budget, spending all but $138,000 of our $33 million budget. So that's pretty close budgeting. Areas that we did see a little overspend was the $16,000 in general government and $142,000 in streets. If we look at general fund expenditures under expenditure category rather than in activities, you can see again that in the area of salaries, we did have funds left over at the end of the year. Again, that is typically driven by vacancies. Also, I think when we were doing the health insurance, the registration for health insurance usually takes place after we've done the budget, or the budget is pretty much completed. And we have been seeing people moving away from our health insurance. And then last year, if you recall, there was a pretty substantial change. If you were in the Aspires plan, the employees' share remained relatively stable, but those that were outside the Aspires plan changed, their share changed pretty dramatically. And so we did see people move over to the cheaper plan too. So all of those things combined generated some good savings in our health insurance area as well. From a contractual service area, our 2018 budget was $7.6 million. The 2018 actual was $7.8 million. So this is an area where we actually overspent. And the major area of overspending was in the motor pool. So again, we were basically paying ourselves. So the motor pool fund charges the activities that use those vehicles so that we can recover the fuel, the parts, and depreciation on those assets so that we have funds in place to replace those assets when they're ready to retire. And if we have a period of a lot of use of the motor pool in this last year because we had heavy winters, of course, then that plowing generates more cost. But a lot of that cost is basically we're paying the motor pool, even though we do experience an increase in the motor pool for fuel and a little bit of wear and tear. A lot of that profit just goes back to the motor pool fund. In supplies and expense, this area we came under budget. We had a budget of $1.2 million. Our actual was $1.1 million. Materials, this is, mainly parks and public works that are using these construction materials. We just stayed under budget, but you can see streets play a big part of this area with road fill and salt at $375,000. And then our fixed charges, most of this is insurance. Again, the insurance is taking place in the insurance fund, so this is charging the departments for their share of the insurance. We're just slightly over budget in this area. And then, as Dennis pointed out earlier, grants and contributions, this would be bad debt expense, and when we have to pay for tax resolutions where we're paying someone back for taxes, that would be this category, and you can see that we did make a lot of payments in 2018, as well as we adjust our accounts receivable for allowance for bad debt. So those are the two main contributors to that grants and contributions area. From a transfers out, this is an expense for the general fund. Our transfers out were $148,088 in 2018 compared to $511 in 2017, with the recycling fund, motor pool fund of $40,000, recycling of $20, and then $88,000 to the capital improvements funds. These transfers out would have been budget modifications that you would have approved in 2018. Our special revenue funds, this is just to kind of give you an overview of what their fund balance is over a period of time. Many of these funds, especially the community development ones, are basically either revolving loan funds that we're reusing the funds. When the funds are paid back, community development issues a new loan, or they're grant-related. That generally is the purpose of special revenue funds. One of the major ones is Holtz-Krause. So the city received payment to help with the Holtz-Krause cleanup, and we do experience some ongoing expenses. So that fund balance is used to finance the ongoing expenses there. And this is just a few more of our special revenue fund balances. But there was, nothing of major concern that I saw when looking at the fund balance over a period of time. The debt service fund, again, if you recall, we've been trying to contribute $4,123,000 of taxes each year. Last year, in 2018, our total expenses out were $10,508,000. Our revenue was $10,467,000, and our ending fund balance was $1,199,615. So you had approved paying off the state trust fund a month or so ago of about $700,000. And we then saved our interest expense in future years by paying that off early. So that payoff is coming out of this $1.1 million. So that payoff will take place on August 30th. Our capital improvements fund at the end of the year, again, we always have projects that are in process. So some of them were committed specifically through purchase orders. Some of them are projects that are incomplete. We had debt proceeds of about $854,000 left over at the end of the year, and about $1.1 million of other project funds to make up that $3.7 million. Again, if you recall, we were able to reduce our debt service for 2019 after evaluating what funds we had available in the capital projects fund at the end of the year, so that we don't accumulate too much. Again, I used this PowerPoint for my presentation to the Joint Review Board, so I put in a map of our tax increment districts for them, so they saw this portion of the presentation now on the tax increment districts, just giving them an idea of where our values are going for the tax increment districts, so you can see that we are experiencing increased growth in the districts. The fund balance of the districts over time. Again, TID 3, for example, has $3 million of fund balance, but some of that is designated for projects. So,
Sure.
Just because a district has funds at the end of the year doesn't mean that those funds aren't designated for other things. So looking at the specific districts, like I said, TID 3 has a $3 million fund balance. We think that a lot of that will be spent down by the end of 2019 because we're finishing up a lot of projects. So our current projects are finishing up the park. We still have the Skywalk obligation, the Fulton Street extension. At the time that I did this, we still had our riverfront housing payments that we needed to be made, and the church site, and as of December 31st of 2018. But you can see over time that deficit, again, is expected to decline, and we will show a profit by its mandated closure, which is in 2031. TID 5, in our last year of increment allocation will be in 2020, and then we will close that district. So we will likely be bringing a resolution before the Finance Committee and Common Council probably around December to actually approve closure of the district. TID 6, again, is getting our expenditure period ends around June 5th of 2020. And we are in the process of completing the Thomas Street Phase 2, First Avenue. We've got some work in process on streetscape and street improvements. The Blinker Housing Project was still outstanding at the end of December of 2018. That has been paid out now. And then the River Edge Trail improvements, some of those will get carried over to 2020. TID 7, which is out by Menards and Ears, Nose, and Throat. Again, looking at the deficits of the district, we expect them to continue to decline, and in 2023, we would be in a surplus situation. And that, in these projections, I have paying off our developer payments of that $1,035,000 to Chuck Dorsey. So those are included in my financial projections.
Okay.
TID 8 is the near west side. We have been managing a small surplus in that fund. So this year, we did a budget modification and we did a project plan amendment to show First Avenue in that fund. And even with the retirement of that project, we are showing an ongoing surplus in that district. TID 9 is Bull Falls. You know, we didn't encounter a lot of expenses in the district, but we have been maintaining a small surplus. You can see we're in between that $150,000 and $200,000 range. So we do project that will get a little bit worse, but then it will turn around, and prior to the district closing, we will be in a surplus. So a number of years ago, we adjusted their loan payments, Bull Falls loan payments, because they came in and gave a presentation on their financial situation. And so, you know, that did have a slight
And that was when they
impact
changed
on-
distribution channels, wasn't it?
Correct.
Okay.
So that did have a little bit of an impact on our revenue stream, but again, we're not talking about anything of significance. TID 10 is our business campus. Again, we are looking at, you know, the deficits here too, we're very limited, and we are expecting those to decline over time.
Question.
Yeah.
So we're going to be running deficits. I'm not sure I understand your graph here. Anything above the line is a surplus, anything below the line is a deficit?
Yes.
So we're going to be running, so right now, we're running a surplus?
In which district? In TID 11?
TID 11.
Right, and those are our project funds, basically. Yep.
Okay, so, but starting in 2020, we project 20 through 2030, we will be running deficits.
At this point, but again, you know, that would be just on the Wausau Chemical and the Great Lakes Cheese development. So, you know, whenever we create a district, we do expect deficits, but, you know, generally speaking, we have development take place, and that brings in tax base that, you know, recovers that infrastructure investment. That's the whole point of a tax increment district, is we invest in the infrastructure. So this is our business campus expansion. We bought the land, we put in the street, the underground utilities.
Water.
And we agreed to the portion of the Wausau Chemical loan being allocated to this fund, the value of Great Lakes Cheese, the value of Wausau Chemical, Corey, what's Corey's last name? From Composite. He's looking at building in this district. So all of those improvements then would help to fund that infrastructure investment.
So, and well, on top of that, we've not used all of that acreage that we acquired.
Right.
With that expansion. So as we would develop anything taxable on the remaining acreage, all of that property tax value would come into the TID.
Correct.
For the rest of its life. So this projection really is assuming that Wausau Chem and Great Lakes are the only things there.
Correct.
And the only things that would ever be there and then anything that comes
Right.
prior, the whole graph is skewed then.
Right, so.
Yeah, but we'll incur additional expenses for anything that goes there. I mean, actually, we always sweeten the pot, so that could drive the deficits even higher.
It would depend on the structure of the deals, yes. I mean,
Right.
if,
I don't know if Chris Shack wants to come and speak to that. You know, I mean,
Yeah, I guess. Again, we often sweeten the pot, Dennis, but never more than the pot is worth. I mean,
You sweeten the pot really good on Wausau Chemical, I'll tell you that. I'm surprised they all don't have diabetes.
again, we've been very clear on Wausau Chemical. As you know, Wausau Chemical pays today on an assessed value of $430,000 or so. They will pay on an assessed value of $7 million when the building is finished. That is the entire premise of the project. Relocating Wausau Chemical isn't about enriching Wausau Chemical. It's about getting a higher tax rate out of them with a new facility and improving the broader business campus expansion area to provide, infrastructure for the other projects.
Didn't we invest $7 million into that project?
Yes. Again, I'm not going to rehash Wausau Chemical, but I want to be crystal clear. Their taxes going forward are assessed on $7 million every year.
Okay, so how long does it take us to recover our $7 million?
Again, considering they weren't paying any or only taxes on $400,000, and considering the properties that we're receiving, on the,
Don't even
as
get
part
me
of that.
started on that, okay?
And that also pay taxes, or will pay taxes in the future, and the taxes they're paying in the business campus. Obviously, I don't have those numbers in front of me, but we're glad to provide them. We provided them when the council made the decision to relocate Wausau Chemical. It wasn't a cheap investment, but it's a clear investment. It's very clear about how it works. And I realize you've often been confused on tax increment districts, which we can gladly, try to explain in a more comprehensive way. But every district has some amount of debt at some point. The key is that the city has a long history of analyzing, making conservative assumptions and projections to ensure that the districts close effectively. You want the district to fund a whole series of improvements. So you want to see a graph, fund go up and then go down and then, and then complete at a fairly balanced rate, because that dip is showing improvements from the plan. So it's not like you're not getting stuff. You're getting all kinds of things out of that, it's money that's being spent on tangible improvements. Everything in the district is being spent primarily on infrastructure. So on TID 11, for example, it went into road construction costs, it went into utility costs, it went into land acquisition costs. That's mainly where it's going, and it may go into to whatever else. If there is an incentive to a developer as part of that project, obviously you're approving an incentive that's only a portion of the total revenue that they're going to pay in taxes. Sometimes it's simple, a percentage for a couple of years. Sometimes it does take longer to pay off if it's a bigger project. But that's something that the council obviously debates on a case-by-case basis, so.
I think the other thing that is valuable here is, we allocated the Wausau Chemical loan, portion of it to the business campus expansion area and a portion of it to the riverfront TID 12. If, let's say, 5 years from now, 8 years from now, we see a lot of growth in TID 12 and not a lot of growth in the business campus, we really would be able to reallocate some of that Wausau Chemical loan, or more of the Wausau Chemical loan, into the district that is performing better than the other one.
Sure.
Which would help us manage deficits if, for example, the business campus was underperforming and TID 12 was overperforming. We could do that, like I said, a few years down when we have a better picture of both of those districts. So that was, I think, the great thing about the way we structured that loan is that it was an eligible cost of both districts, and we could allocate it as we chose.
Okay.
Clarify one thing. At one time, I was confused about TIDS. I'm no longer confused. I'm concerned, but I'm not confused. So let's just set that for the record.
Yeah, of course. Well, I mean, you're entitled to your opinion, but I want to be clear that there is, you should not be concerned about the city's TIF management. And if you are, then you're not informed enough, because it's very clear that the city has been very diligent in managing the districts, and the assumptions within the plans are very conservative, and each district has been very competitive by any standard. So, there's a cap on the amount of value in TIFs. The city remains below that cap. The debt service is obviously clearly very manageable and continues to fall every year. Again, it is debt, it's money that the city is spending, but all of them are going towards projects. We want to be clear that TIF money isn't going towards general administration and things. They're going towards tangible improvements in the city every day, whether it's paving projects or infrastructure projects or incentives to a new development, and each of those you've obviously the council agrees to every time, but those are meaningful things. They're things you can drive out and see. Okay, this is what we bought, with that dip, if you will, in the graph. And as you make those investments do pay off. And there is risk, of course, where you say, well, what happens if the investment doesn't pay off? And that's, it's part of the balancing act that you do. But the history speaks for itself. The districts that have closed, that are closing very soon, and all the balances you see before you are, kind of continuing to be very competitive with what's expected.
Well, I think if we look at the value of what those areas were worth at the beginning of the TID and what they're worth today, we can certainly see that the purpose of, TIDs being to, either spur jobs or address blight or develop things that otherwise may not be developed, we could certainly see positive results. But I think just as an illustration of the discussion we've been having, I guess if we could page back to this map, which is page 1 of Mary Ann's presentation to the Joint Review Board, this map actually bears public notice, I think, because as I look at this, it's color-coded, and so on the screen, it may not be as evident, but I think anybody that views our meeting packet online should take time to pore over this map, because, there's a rumor that I hear that keeps going around that says everything in Wausau is in a TID, and not everything in Wausau is in a TID. And when you look at this map, only the areas of the map that are colored represent TID boundaries. So the red on the outside is the city of Wausau municipal limits proper, and everything inside is the city, but only where you see color on the map, the green, the yellow, the purple, the orange, the light blue, those are TID districts. Everything else is paying tax into our general fund operations.
And just maybe of note too, look at TID 5, which is closing very shortly, and TID 6, which is the broad swath of purple running, right there, which is also closing shortly. And
Right.
those are both districts that and you know the projects that they've funded.
Well, but those funds also then will be reclaimed into the general fund.
Correct.
In the near future.
Yeah,
So I
both
think-
of them will have heavy balances from
Right.
what you were looking at.
Right, and I would just invite anybody who is under the assumption that, we are either over-TIDed or that everything in Wausau is in a TID, because often that global assumption gets made, is to take a look at the map and see really how much of Wausau in terms of square miles is in a TID, and it really is not near as much as what people think.
Sure, and maybe
So-
go to the next graph, the increment balances. Again, the key is showing, the increase in the city's TIF district's increment balances because the infrastructure has been improved, because there was a cornfield there in the past, and the business campus has been constructed in that location. Because there was a chemical storage warehouse on the riverfront that paid very little taxes, and now they're building a new chemical storage warehouse that pays significantly more taxes in a new building. And that's what's causing what causes that increase, And again, it's not always directly linear, but it does show the continued progress that the city tries to manage there.
I was going to point out too, TID 5, which is, I know it can be hard to see, but it's this black line that does dip down. That decreases because we reduced the size of the district because it was basically generating more increment than we needed each year. And so we made the decision to reduce its size.
And return that to the general fund, yep.
Yes.
Earlier than we figured on.
Right. And, you know, TID 5, TID 10, and TID 11 are all industrial, basically old industrial park districts, as was TID 4, which has been closed. And they all, you know, functioned under the same model where we purchase the land, we make the infrastructure improvements, and then growth occurs over time. So that TID 11 is the same model that we've used in the past.
You know, that's all great, but I've got a graph here that shows the total TID debt. It equals $54,045,218.
Right,
That's a startling amount of money.
it is.
I mean, it will eventually, we assume, be paid off, and all these TIDs will go smoother than what we've had with River Life, which has had all the success of the maiden voyage of the Titanic so far. But I think that we finally have routed it, and we've steered around the iceberg, so we'll see. But,
Again, individual projects within the district may or may not be, may or may not have issues or challenges. That's not its own, it's not an individual district, it's the downtown district as a whole, right? So all of the improvements that have gone on downtown, funded by the city in various ways, are all, obviously firing at a very successful, angle so far. And you see that in the TIF in the total increment chart that continues to rise. So debt is high because of all the conscious choices recently to make a series of big improvements. You know what all those are. People see those improvements every day. Again, TIF debt is not going towards, general operations or general things. It's going towards tangible things that people experience. It's going to.
That's another problem I had. I understand the TIF district, the increment generated stays in that district to service the debt. Is that correct? Okay.
That's correct, yeah.
So that means that the school board doesn't get any money, and the county doesn't get any money, and the tech doesn't get any money.
But
Is
they
that
would,
correct?
right, that's true, but it's just on the new growth. So the
Well, on the
premise
increment.
is if
But
we.
what I'm saying is, those people still need money to operate their procedures too. So if they don't get that money, what do you think their course of action is? Do they raise their levy then to make up for that loss?
Through
Did
their
they figure-
representation on the Joint Review Board, they all have agreed to participate in those plans.
Yeah, because they
Ahead of time.
understand that if they don't make the improvements, they're not going to see the growth. I mean, that's the issue. You're correct, they wouldn't receive that, but they also wouldn't receive any growth either because there would be no improvements to the neighborhood. So when you say, we're going to take a cornfield and put a new road in, which is the exact example of Innovation Way, okay, all the parties are obviously involved in that process, and the Joint Review Board, along with council, approved that because we said, well, you're right, we don't take any debt, we also don't get any payoff if that sits in a cornfield. If it's converted to a business campus and there's a, major cheese processing facility and there's a new chemicals warehouse and there's other projects that will come to fruition in the business campus, they're going to pay a lot more taxes than was done before. And to do that, they're going to need a road and water and sewer and, whatever infrastructure is there. And I think that's the premise of it. You're correct that it's going to take that debt to get it done, but that debt is only going to tangible projects. You can debate whether those projects are good ones or not good ones, of course, but there's a project plan for every district, and and those improvements are being funded by that debt, and then it's an investment. That's obviously what these are going towards, is a physical investment in the competitiveness of the city.
So when the TID gets formed, I think just for people who are interested in TID 101, but when a tax increment district gets formed, all of the entities that participate through tax collection, be it the tech, the county, the schools, and us, the other three taxing entities essentially agree to a point-in-time freeze on where their tax increment is. And they are then sustained with that point-in-time freeze during the tax increment district's life, And so we're capturing the growth for a short time, and then we all capture the growth at the end. So it's not like all their taxes go away and they don't get any, but that's a gamble that a lot of them are willing to take, because if they were at that point in time, say nothing developed ever, or the area declined, they would be either at or below that point in time freeze forever.
Yeah, and to the point, again, Dennis is correct to say, well, they're not capturing that increment. Correct, but they're only not capturing that increment on the geography that you're seeing on that map. So these are, very limited areas of the city where they're not capturing the increment. They're still capturing the base. They're not capturing the growth. And why? Because the district is funding the infrastructure improvements just in those respective geographic areas. And keep in mind, so say that that project wasn't funded with a TIF, okay? Say the general fund had to fund that project. The city taxpayers would obviously be paying for that road and other improvements at 100%. But why the TIF system is fairer, and again, you can critique the TIF system if you like, it's never perfect, but it's fairer than because all the taxing entities agree to share in the costs for those improvements, because they also share in the future revenue from those improvements. And, so within those limited geographies where the entities, council and the other entities have said, yes, we agree to forego growth for a period of time, or forego our receipt of the growth for a period of time, because we know that those revenues are going to go to fund the improvements today.
Okay. So then the final TID, this is the new downtown riverfront and mall. Again, we don't have any development specifics yet in that area. So right now, we're projecting some deficits. Again, it would just be for the Wausau chemical loan payoff. So as Dennis pointed out, kind of an allocation of the TID districts, the TID 3 at 24 million and TID 6 at 11 million are the two, and TID 11 are the major holders of debt. TID 6, and I have when the debt will be paid off for each one of those districts. So you can see in 2023, TID 9 will be paid off, as well as TID 11 in 2023, TID 6, 2025. So we do have some retirement of debt going on. Our TID obligations to developers are outlined here. Again, some of these now have been met in 2019, such as the TID 6 blanker. We've made that payment. I'm sure you've noticed that the property that we purchased across from the Resurrection Parish Church has construction activity taking place on there, so that will be resolved in 2019. Our payments to the riverfront have been made. So those are some of the big ones. We've been making our draws on the Wausau chemical loan. Our expected termination date, so this shows the mandated closure and our expected closure. So here, TID 5, like I said, needs to be closed by July 8th of 2020. TID 7, which is where the parking lot for Brockmeyer Park, its mandated closure date is 2026. We expect it to close in 2022 or 2023. TID 6, 2025. TID 9, 2028, with its mandated in 2039. TID 10 in 2029, its mandated closure is 2033. TID 3 in 2031, TID 11 in 2034, and TID 12, its closure date. Again, when we're that far out, it's really hard to anticipate when the actual closure will take place. And just a picture of the two big projects out into 11 today. The top one, of course, is Great Lakes Cheese, and the bottom one is the Wausau Chemical Building. And then in 2019, we have discussed with you two boundary changes, TID 8 up in the 17th Avenue area to bring in Mountain Lanes project, and in TID 12 to bring in the Aspirus Downtown Clinic project. And that's what we got.
Okay. All right. Okay, does anybody have additional questions for Mary Ann about the report? Okay, if not, we'll move to item number 7, which is our last item, which is the report on the July 2019 general fund results.
So I guess we've been continuing to disclose, I guess, good things about our revenues, and that trend continues with the July report. Very strong investment income. We're at $952,000 for the year. The budget was $328,000, and last year we were at $263,000 at the end of July. So you can see that we'll be doing very well in that area. Permit revenue is strong again. This year, we're already over budget in permits at $286 versus the budget of $254. We were at $237 last year this time. So no real big areas of concern. Our fines forfeitures, we have noticed a decline in that as it compares to last year. We were at $265. This year, we're at $210. And based on the current trend, it looks like we could miss that budget item. So that, again, is something that, I don't know, we did reach out to the individuals kind of who would be in the know on that area. The police department reported that traffic stops are very close to their annual, but citations are down about 27% from 2018. And I guess citations are not meant to generate revenue. Okay, I got a different opinion about that.
But they certainly do. They certainly do.
So I happen to like citation now and then, but not for myself personally, but for others. So,
I personally contributed to that recently.
did you? Thanks, Dave. General fund expenses, again, we've been kind of reporting that we saw some higher than normal expenses in Public Works due to the severe winter that we had. But when we look through the year, we're just slightly ahead of last year. We're at 56% of the budget spent, with 58% of the year complete. Last year, we were at 55% of the budget spent. So if you recall, we came really close to expending our entire budget last year. And where we saw our profit was in strong revenues. I would anticipate, based on where we're sitting today, that we're going to encounter a similar situation at the close of 2019, where our profit is generated by the revenues exceeding budget, and that will be very, very close to our general fund expenses by the end of the year. So,
Okay.
no bad news there, and like I said, we'll make it appointment with our auditor to come in, maybe not September 10th, because it's looking like that agenda is full, but
It's
maybe
full.
the second meeting in September.
Yep.
But again, these are audited numbers that this PowerPoint was presented by, so.
Yep. All right, any questions on the July report? If not, we'll place it on file, and then a motion to adjourn would be appropriate. Motion by Kelbach, is there a second? Second by Martins. Members in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. We'll stand adjourned. Thank you, everybody.